Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the regular council meeting for February 26th to order, 6:30. First of all, I'd like to do a territorial acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the city of Colwood lies within the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people, represented by the Kasepsum and Songhees nations. We thank them for sharing these lands in peace and friendship. Approval of the agenda. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the near-term agenda and the adoption of today's agenda of the regular council. Thank you. Oh, sure. Go ahead, Councillor Olson.
Thank you. And I just have a question for Mr. Earl. Now that the pesticide use bylaw has been supported by the Environment Committee, I was just looking for confirmation that it will indeed appear on the next meeting of council for March 11th.
That's correct, together with the committee recommendation.
Thank you.
And you're going to move the motion then? Okay, thank you, Councillor Olson. Councillor Grove is second. Any discussion? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Move on. Mayor's message. Sorry, I've got a few things. I just a weekend of appreciations. See the involvement of all council this weekend all over the community. First of all, I'd like to thank the Green Team Canada for their work in planting the native species and removing invasive plants in the Royal Bay area on Saturday. This event was actually sponsored by Gablecraft Homes. A shout out to Councillor Ward and Grove for their active participation in this event. Thank you very much, guys. I'd also like to thank Councillor Jordison for organizing us for we were the Colwood Chill team on the West Shore coldest night of the year, a fundraiser walk on Saturday evening. Our team was represented by Councillor Jordison and her spouse Richard, Councillor Jensen, me, and my wife. That was our team. And our team managed to raise $2,010, and our target was only 750, so 168% over. So we ranked as one of the top 10 teams. We actually came in 6th overall for fundraising, so thank you very much. This fundraiser actually exceeded the goal of $55,000. I think it was almost $57,000 they raised. And of course, that's for the Pacific Family Center and the Our Place Society. And what they tell me, it was actually the most successful fundraiser yet. So it was really well done. Thank you very much, everyone. Also like to shout out to Councillor Jensen and his son for bringing out their tools and volunteering their skills and time in the repair cafe that was organized by Reimagine West Shore in the Chosen yesterday. And Councillor Grove, I understand you were over there cheerleading them on. So thank you again, Councillor Jensen. And last of all, I just a quick shout out to congratulations to the Arts and Culture Society Colwood on a very successful launch of their new facility. In 2 weeks, they've had over 400 visitors, and there's nothing but praise. I just looked at the guest book there, and it was really well done. And if you haven't been there, I just encourage everyone just to take a boo there. It's a great job by the city staff and preparing the area, and it was just an all-around great team effort. So thank you very much, but really encourage you because it's absolutely a phenomenal facility. On that note, I'll move to adoption, receipt of the minutes. Are there any errors or omissions in any of the minutes attached to the agenda? Seeing none, may I have a mover and seconder for adoption of the regular council meeting for February 12th and receipt of the minutes of the Planning and Land Use Committee meeting minutes for December 4th. Okay, Councillor Olson and Councillor Ward. Any discussion? Seeing none. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. We'll move on. Public participation. I think this is the only second time in a year and a bit where we had no written submissions. So there was no written submissions. At this point in time, I will ask members of the public will be given the opportunity to speak or ask questions. You'll be given 2 minutes. We got a new light system for those that are haven't been here, instead of the bell going off, we got a light system. Green means you can speak. Yellow is a warning. Is it a 30-second or 1-minute warning, is it? And red means we're about to cut you off. So alternately, can I just get a show of hands? Because we do give you a choice to speak to the item on the regular agenda. If you want to speak then, I'll make sure I pause there. And Mr. English, which number do you want to speak to? $7.5, okay. I will pause then for you to speak at that time, Mr. English. And so now I'll just open her up to anyone that wishes to speak. So I think we have one person online, correct? Supposedly, oh, okay, no. Anyone in person? Well, thank you.
Okay. Marco Jaras here, property owner of 2346 Sooke Road, rezoning that is on the consent agenda for this evening. I'm asking that one of the conditions in the resolution of the Planning and Land Use Committee's report for the rezoning application be reconsidered. Therefore, I respectfully ask that it is lifted from the consent agenda. The item at hand is the point pertaining to staff work for the developer to identify a fixed term as a purpose rental building. Given the current environment of high interest rates and high construction costs, we would respectfully request consideration for greater flexibility than being restricted by a fixed term rental period. As not being restricted to a rental increases the chances of the project moving forward in this construction environment, even though it's still our genuine intent to proceed with a rental building that we have been working since purchasing this property in 2010. So I would welcome the opportunity to speak to this in greater detail.
Okay. Which item was that? Which
That was the rezoning for 2346 Sooke Road.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you very much. Anyone else for public participation? See none, I will move on. Delegations, we have two delegations tonight. First one is 6.1, which is digital methods to support neighborhoods adapt and thrive in changing climate conditions. Carol Brown and Anne-Marie Daniel with Resilience, Urban Systems and Habitat.
Okay. Great. Okay. All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It is my pleasure to introduce to you an exciting new project. The Resilience Urban Systems and Habitat Initiative, or RUSH initiative, is an online toolkit that is now available to be used by cities, their staff, and their communities. Scenic hopes to see this comprehensive and ever-growing visual mapping tool become a part of Colwood's environmental knowledge. All members of the community, citizens, professionals, developers, and even school environment and mapping projects are encouraged to add to this ever-evolving picture of climate change resiliency. This is an interactive toolkit that promotes climate action through connectivity of natural features such as pollinator gardens or human-built features like safe bus stops, both of which contribute to long-term sustainability of communities. All freely available to non-technical and technical citizens alike. Rush wants to support communities on southern Vancouver Island in their desire to create sustainable development. Scenic sees a true benefit in having the City of Colwood collaborate with Rush in this work. We have the two innovators and researchers of Rush here with us this evening. University of Victoria professor, Dr. Malia Acker, who is creating a toolkit, Engage Nature-Based Solutions. Dr. Acker heads up the community mapping program at the University of Victoria. Anne-Marie Daniel is the owner of Nature R&D, a nature-inspired design company that is leading Rush. These people have joined forces along with Peninsula Streams and Shorelines to bring Rush to the South Island region. I am hoping you will find their presentation as interesting and useful as Scenic has found it to be. Thank you.
So thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you, Scenic. Yeah, Rush is not trying to be the authority, but trying to create a one-stop shop to leverage all the good work that's going on so that it's easy to find and people can quickly figure out where they're vulnerable to climate change and what it is they can do about it. Voila. It's a cross-sectoral collaboration. We've got Peninsula Streams, number of community organizations, and yeah, we've had lots of letters of support in our grant applications. And so the thing is, we're trying to put forward the idea that if we understand how we can protect this area from climate change related disasters, then we can create resilience in the region, because we can only have healthy communities if we have strong life support systems. So it's about this connection between personal health and planet health. We're coming at it from an existential point of view. They say that climate change is the existential question of our time. And so we're looking at questions of how can I beat the heat? How can I get a sense of peace? How can I protect the coast? And so we're looking to create the big picture for beginner's mind, feedback loops, connected systems. We're looking to, through community mapping, make sure that what's on the ground matches what's on the map. And we're looking to create a shared language for planning, because quite often environmental assessments are proprietary. And so we want everybody to be kind of in the loop on the issues. Does the sound okay? This just sounds funny to me. So we're looking for accessible data on decision making, and you can choose from a number of data sets on the side. Each data set has, if you press the information button, where it's from. A lot of it is government reports. Here we have coastal inundation, and then we also have historical heat domes. And so you can put your address into the address field and find out, do you have 30% canopy cover? Are you vulnerable to coastal inundation? And really get a sense of your vulnerabilities. In North Saanich, which is where I live on the Wasatnich territories, there's, you know, it seems the best place to put it is at put affordable housing is at the McTavish Exchange, which of course is full of bus routes, but it's also right on top of underground streams and an aquifer, very sensitive to saltwater intrusion and heat domes. So there's a lot to consider there in planning that development, if indeed it goes ahead. So we're trying to change those critical questions that get asked about community planning and climate change. It's not all doom and gloom, though. We're looking at a more holistic view of health from a sense of belonging to that connection between ecosystem and personal health. And so here you see community groups have started plotting pollinator garden connectivity so that the actions we're taking, we can see how well they're working. On our circular economy map, we have the green businesses highlighted, and then all the various places where you can recycle things in the region. We've also taken the CRD reports on emissions and turned them into easy to grasp visuals on how municipalities are doing relative to the targets we've all set on climate change. Colin's doing quite well. There you go. And you can see as we build this out with the help of people, community groups, you will see even more correlation between the EV car charging stations, the good transportation routes. These are the kind of juxtapositions we want to show. As for buildings, most of our municipalities are not doing that well. And so there's a lot to understand there as we move forward in this accelerated development mandate. On the Wood Wide Web map that we have there, people are plotting their favorite trees, their big trees, the 3 trees they can see from their window, because there's a correlation between income and canopy cover. And it's been established globally and locally that we need 30% canopy cover in order to have the health outcomes that we're looking for. Protect from flooding gives you the opportunity to plot rain gardens. Not all of them are on this map, but Peninsula Streams has a goal of 1,000 rain gardens. And of course, this is very important when it comes to flooding. We will get to the point where we're able to estimate the extreme volume of precipitation and gauge that against how much permeable surface and rain gardens we have, so that communities can have a sense of whether they're all right. And you can sort of see here, we also, good stuff to check out is all the stuff we found out going on in the city or in the region, and then some sort of quick learning on that issue. You see all the buttons at the top of the various maps we've got going on.
I'm here primarily in support of Anne-Marie's work, and also to tell you that my class, my community mapping class in the geography department at UVic, has been partnering with Rush for the last 3 years, putting student teams onto this project and helping to develop the website map by map. The website that you see here is currently separate from Rush, but we envision in the next couple of years folding those together somehow. This is currently my postdoctoral work, funded by Environment and Climate Change Canada. And it's a great opportunity that I've had to liaise with various community organizations around the region, including Peninsula Streams, groups that are doing restoration of the Colquitts and the Bowker Creek, and Bilston Creek, and even Jordan River Coalition, and to tell stories about that restoration and the nature-based solutions that they're engaging with.
Yeah, which will all appear as pop-ups on the map so that there's, learning along the way. So we're looking to empower communities. This is an open access and scalable tool, so we're hoping to bring it to other communities, but the collaborative work and design starts here. We're wanting to showcase all the good work that's going on. We want to increase the insurability of properties. I don't know if you remember when the fires were going on, some homeowners, new buyers couldn't get fire insurance because they were within a 50 kilometers of a fire. We're looking to get events near me, plotting connectivity. We're looking for interactive community research, collaborative climate action, and funding partnerships. 75% of our team are under the age of 35, so this is very much a youth-led initiative as well. And we're what'stherush.ca. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. I did take the opportunity when I was at Reimagine West Shore when they did their displays down at the senior center. And it was absolutely phenomenal. I was so intrigued this doesn't do it justice, you know, when you do it live and you're showing it on the computer screen, big difference. And just a quick question so everyone understands here, when are you gonna go live for public? Yeah, I remember you were saying that you were gonna, there was an official start date, right?
We're going to be having 10 events in 10 days. We're looking for people's feedback now. We can get the feedback button at the top, but yeah, we're going to start before we're finished.
It's very innovative. That's what I could say to you about this. It's excellent. Thank you. I'll just open it up for council for questions. Seeing none, thank you very much again for coming out, and yeah, I just hope that everyone gets the opportunity at some time just to see this working live because it's amazing. Thank you very much for the tool. Thank you. And just so everyone knows, this presentation is a little bit different than the one that's in your package, and it'll be updated, and the updated package has been provided and it will be appended to the agenda tomorrow. Okay, thanks very much. We'll move on to 6.2 West Shore Arts and Culture Center project update. Judith Clinton. Welcome back, Judith.
Good evening, and that was a great presentation. I love that one. A tough one to follow. So Judith Collington, President, One Fuqua Performing Arts Centre Society, with me, board member Dorothy York, and also a couple of our members. So the purpose of this presentation is simply information. We're not looking for any decisions, nothing tough. You just get back to sort of sit back and listen and enjoy. What we want to do is share some of the findings from our accessibility study, give you a brief update on the work of the Intermunicipal Committee, and then just share a few next steps for our group. Yeah. There it is. Okay. So it has long been our goal to make sure that when we build this Arts and Culture Centre, that it is accessible for people with physical challenges, for people with mental challenges. It is inclusive and welcoming and safe for people who are gender diverse, neurodiverse, culturally diverse. So we felt it was important to have a really strong understanding of how to do that right from the get-go, before we have a location, before we have a design, before we get into operation, because it will feed into all of those. We were fortunate in having a great partnership with the West Shore Arts Council. They helped us to acquire $25,000 from the BC Arts Council, which was huge in making this happen. And then we also had funding from a number of other municipalities and organizations. So we were very happy and fortunate that our consultants who did our feasibility study were also available and interested in doing our accessibility and inclusion study. So there was this kind of very nice follow-on in terms of information, and the two reports really do build upon each other. They pulled all the information together through a series of interviews with people with lived experience, talking to other facilities about what they had done, and really kind of learning from what was state of the art. The report is on our website. I think either the link or the full report was provided to you. And I thoroughly encourage you to have a chance to read it, at very least the summary, because there just is a lot of good information in it. Just very quickly, a few of the key findings. Something we found throughout doing the study, but also in the conversations that we've had afterwards, there really is a strong interest in making sure that we are accessible and inclusive in our community. And also this fundamental notion that, you know, what we do for one group really benefits everybody. And to me, that the image there really shows it, that, you know, you make a parking space wheelchair accessible, but it also works for perhaps sort of, you know, seniors who are less mobile, mums and dads pushing pushchairs, etc., etc. Just a few of the recommendations. Strong, of course, is reconciliation. You know, something that we all know the importance of. Reconciliation, inclusion of local First Nations. And as a part of that, they recommended that we set up what they call a guiding committee. So again, a group of people with diverse lived experience who can help work with us as we work through this project to really make it work well for everybody. In terms of site selection, a number of suggestions, one of the obvious ones being making sure that it's accessible by bus on a really good bus route. Inclusive building design, a message around do not do the big colonial building style, do something that's kind of nice and open, wood, windows, it feels welcoming, people can see what they're walking into. It really kind of helps people to kind of feel comfortable that, yes, this is a place that they're going to feel at home and comfortable in. Obvious space design things like having gender neutral washrooms, adult change tables, but also having imagery that shows inclusiveness. So things like perhaps rainbow flags. Having staff who are not only well trained in working with all kinds of people, trained in respectful inclusion, but also who themselves respect and show that diversity. So not just one group of people who are a part of your staff. And they also said, and make sure you pay them appropriately so they stay a nice long time. There were a number of kind of what I call aha moments in there. You're all familiar with the Rick Hansen guidelines, which talk about, building accessibility. What we heard loud and clear is that is very much a minimum standard that, that's the absolute baseline. There are many ways that you could and should go beyond that. Designing with dignity. I would argue this gentleman is not feeling like this place he's just arrived at is designed with dignity. He's arrived, he's unable to go up the stairs. And so the message is this is not for him. It's also about don't bury your elevators in some little back corner so that somebody in a wheelchair is feeling like, well, I'm not kind of part of this. I'm accepted, but I'm not welcomed. So those kind of basic things. Supportive technology. A lot of people are using devices that are web dependent, so having really good internet service throughout. Good information pre-visit. What we found is that a lot of people really like to be able to go onto your website and look ahead of time and say, oh, wonderful, yes, they've got a quiet room where I can take my kid who's, not noise tolerant. They offer special programs. They offer services in multiple languages. They have, respect for First Nations. So again, knowing ahead of time will help that kind of comfort level for people who want to visit. And the hand dryers. That was an eye-opening moment for me. You know those lovely, noisy hand dryers that do a wonderful job of getting your hands dry really quickly? You have a person who's not noise tolerant, they can't use that washroom. So are we making sure that everybody is welcome and included? So that is just a very quick summary of what we found and heard. As you know, we established last year an intermunicipal committee, and Councillor Grove is your rep on that committee. You can see his happy smiling face. I actually need to slightly update this slide. We now have council reps from 6 municipalities. As of a couple of weeks ago, Sooke joined us, which is awesome. And this group is given the task of getting us towards a grant-ready project. So make sure we know the location, the funding model, the operating model, and we're ready to go forward and get those amazing grants that we're going to access. Focus for this coming year, obviously the work of the intermunicipal committee, getting a grant-ready project, excuse me, identifying the building partners, so people who want to share space with us, people who might be part of a bigger building of which we are part. We are also in the process of trying to hire a part-time outreach coordinator. what we're finding is that the workload is steadily growing, and it's becoming more than our little volunteer group can handle. So we have an active application with the Victoria Foundation to hire, and you will of course know that we've also submitted a grant and aid application to Colwood as well as to all of the other West Shore municipalities. And as a part of the work of that individual, one of the things we're going to have them do is showcasing some of the local art. So working with all 6 municipalities to really showcase some of the fabulous local arts that are out there, and bringing, really bringing the arts community into this. That is my presentation, and I'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Judith. Open it up to council for any questions. I have one question. I think that you've got the reports draft right now, the one that Colwood had paid for, correct? I believe
Yes.
it's draft.
Yeah,
So when will it be finalized?
it is final.
Oh,
Well,
I-
it's final in that it's the piece that's foundational. Obviously, the next level of design will happen based on where the specific location is. Yeah.
so I can't remember because it's going back a few years right now. But part of the deliverable, I believe, was we were supposed to see a high level business model, like how the model for revenue and for costs. And so I just noticed that it's now part of the committee, the intermunicipal committee's job to do this. So is that not going to be delivered in this report then?
Interestingly, one of the things that we talked about at our last intermunicipal committee meeting is the development of the business plan. And it really does need to be a shared piece amongst the municipalities.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Any
Yeah.
other questions? No? See none. Thank you very much. Judith.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll move on to consent agenda. There's a number of items that potentially, I'm going to make I'm going to move that I want to move 7.1 to 8.4. That is the development variance permit for Tradewinds Avenue. So it just requires one of us. So I'm moving that. If I heard right, potentially 7.3. I think there was this 2346. So can I get someone to move that one? Okay, thank you very much. That's Councillor Olson is going to move that one. And item 7.4, and we're going to move that to 8.6. That's the Infrastructure Committee Terms of Reference Review. So on that note, can I get a motion to, yes. Oh, right, sorry. Okay, that will move to 8.7 then. Okay. So that leaves the rest. That's only 7.2 and 7, that's 7.2 on the consent. Can I get a motion for that? Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Councillor Jensen's a seconder, please. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Olson. Discussion? Seeing none, any opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. So now we'll get into new business, 8.1, CRD Regional Water Supply Development Cost Charge. And I think this is co-authored Councillor Ward and Councillor Jordison. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You'll have to excuse me. I have to find where I am in the agenda after all the card shuffling that's gone on here. So Councillor Jordison and I should add that Councillor Jordison is the city's representative on the Water Commission and had put forward a motion of her own at that body. We are really echoing what was put forward and accepted by Central Saanich at their recent council meeting here, that the city of Colwood asked the CRD to engage with an unbiased third party to conduct an economic impact study, first of all. At this stage, the proposed $2 billion project and the significant development cost charges that the CRD are looking to, label across the region, are the economic impact of that on housing and costs hasn't been studied in any way, shape, or form at this point. And to me, whether or not you support or are opposed to the DCC proposal by the CRD is actually irrelevant. It's just, to me, is just a missing component of data from what stands to be the largest expenditure in CRD history across this region. So when we're talking about essentially, adding 2/3 more cost onto every new home built across the region, we should be cognizant of what impact that has in a housing crisis, what impact that has on the construction industry, what impact that has on home buyers. So as I said, Central Saanich passed a similar motion. Others out there have expressed similar concerns that let's slow it down and do an economic impact study to really understand the ramifications before we do that. So that's one of the points that we're looking for here. Further to that, since of course that would in itself take a little bit of time, looking for a third-party review to study the assumptions and kind of core methodology behind this proposal. Despite a lot of rhetoric, there still doesn't seem to be, any real acknowledgement that there's conflicting views on this. I would add that Jonathan Huggett, who's well respected in this community and across Greater Victoria, was kind of the last minute savior, if you will, on the Blue Bridge fiasco, and has also, conducted a governance review out in Sooke, for example. He's well versed in these things, and he's put out a report that really questions the numbers and methodology used by the CRD, the assumptions, 25 years of data that runs counter to what's being said publicly. So, I would like to see, and I know Councillor Jordison and I have talked about this, is that, that we slow things down and take the time to study these assumptions and actually verify the information. And then lastly, if they're moving forward on these DCCs, that the CRD consider bulk water rate supports for agricultural land users. That, comes into play certainly in the district of Metchosin, but out in Saanich as well. We have food producers and farms in the area that, could be, this could be very detrimental to them if there isn't an accommodation made, which is very common in most other regions. And then as well, again, going back to the housing issue, there's no discussion at this point in time about any DCC waivers for affordable or rental housing. So someone's building an affordable housing project, as rare as they are, they're also going to be saddled with these costs, which, as we've seen from the few projects that have come before this council and previous councils, every dollar counts when you're talking about an affordable project. So there's been really no evidence or sorry, no investigation or anything done as to the impact of, how do we mitigate that? So, this is the three sort of core items in the motion that we're looking to put forward tonight, that we support Central Saanich and that we just simply ask for a sober second review of what stands to be a real game changer in this region. Lastly, in terms of motivating, I would say that, the impact to municipalities can't be understated as well. If the CRD is effectively almost doubling in some cases the DCCs leveled on new construction, that's going to limit our own ability to do things in future. We've added a new parks DCC, which was long overdue, which brings, money into cities' coffers, but future DCCs could be really limited if the CRD takes such a massive share of the pie for who knows what, because again, they don't even have to spend it on this project. It's really just a way to bank money. There could be a real negative impact on municipal governments across the entire region. So I would add that this was forwarded through by the CRD Water Commission. There are 27 directors on the board. It was the last meeting before the election. 7 of them were on vacation. One director at that meeting raised the point that this plan had never appeared on the agenda in its entirety. It was not published at all. The chair was incorrect. The chair at the time stated that this in fact had appeared at a May meeting. During that meeting, this other commissioner went back and looked and clarified that no, it had not. So in fact, it had never appeared on the agenda of any of these 27 directors. So 7 not there, 9 as a result abstained from voting. one can surmise because they'd never had a chance to read the plan. So really a minority group, 10 people advanced this forward, and we have no way of knowing whether or not they'd ever even read the plan. So this is for $2 billion and the largest single sort of DCC, labeling across the entire region. So I support what Central Santa should put forward. I commend them for taking these steps, and I believe that we owe it to the taxpayer to ask some serious questions and slow things down just enough time to make sure that these three key items that we've raised here get a strong, sober look. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Ward. Councillor Jordison, do you want to further motivate?
Yes, please. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that I think there's also a need to, there's been no analyzation of the water use trends and I think new developments are using less water. There's been no opportunity to look at conserving water. I think, there's potential to reduce discretionary water use. I think in July and August, we use 2 times what our water use is in December. So there's just been a lot of data that's missing from this, also the DCCs, they're, it's not entirely about the DCCs, but they are currently based on the worst case scenario. So, I think if the analysis was done, that as we're suggesting that the amount would likely change. Also, what's really disheartening to me is that the First Nations have not been properly consulted. And it's they've come forward. I've received letters from them, from the Sooke Nations to the Malahat Nation to just trying to think what the other one was, to the Beecher Bay. Yeah, and they've expressed their upset that they weren't properly consulted, and they've asked for more time. Also, with diverting the leach water for as long as we possibly can, because we don't need the extra water at this time, would also allow us to extend the watershed for many years to come, to possibly 2060. Not filtering water eventually is probably going to have to happen, but I think there's time, and maybe this just isn't the time to be doing this. Our economy is suffering and people are just hanging on, and I don't think with the CRD's, priorities and the provincial government's priorities of building housing, that this is the time to be implementing DCCs of this sort at the, huge amounts that they are. So, yeah, so that's why I'm asking for another look at this. I might actually suggest that the motion be amended to include the First Nations. There could be legal implications for the member municipalities. That is a concern of mine. And I think it would be, for not to mention it, it would be wrong not to mention that. So that's my motivation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I open, I have Councillor Olson and Councillor Day to speak on this. I just want to make sure the questions are directed to the motions before discussing. So I hope that's, I'm not, or otherwise I'll get you to make the motion at this point in time. Are they just questions then? Okay, so I'll open it up to Councillor Olson.
Yeah, no, definitely still speaking to the motion. So there's certainly some of these recommendations that I could get behind, and some of them that I'm having a difficult time with. One is, bear with me, I've just made a few notes here too, is that Councillor Ward, you're ultimately asking to repeat work potentially that's already been done with the economic impact study. It's my understanding that that has already been done, and to repeat the work is going to cost potentially tens of thousands of dollars. Perhaps I'm incorrect there. I did come to the table this evening with an open mind. The other was the waiving DCCs for affordable and rental housing. I understand that new developments, albeit are using less water and less pressure, but the pressure on our water system is still there. So I'm not 100% sold on waiving the DCCs for affordable and rental housing. The one thing that I can get behind is the bulk water rate supports for agricultural lands. I know that it does have benefits, and it makes water more affordable and accessible to farms. It encourages conservation and helps to reduce costs, just to name a few. So I just wanted to ask you further about the economic impact study. Is this something that we're essentially repeating the work on?
Councillor.
Thank you through the chair, Councillor Olson. No, there has been no economic impact study conducted as of this date. There has been studies on the water usage. There's been studies on minimal studies on other means of mitigation, but there has been no economic study on the impact to either the housing industry, construction, affordable housing, any of those things. And I would add just, further to your point around water usage, actually the water usage tables that I obtained through the CRD show that we haven't even reached water usage levels now as of today's date with all of the construction we have that are equivalent to what was used kind of in the mid to late 1990s. We still fall well short of the peak water usage at that time due to largely new construction, new appliance usage and things like that. So I think it's important to note here that the motion here isn't to say, hey, we don't need filtration or that growth in the region will one day, won't one day lead to that. It's really just about making sure that, okay, are we setting aside the right amount of money or is it too much? And what calculations are those based on? Because the argument made by the CRD has been, well, water usage, new construction growth pays for growth. As new construction goes up, water usage is theoretically linear, and therefore we should plan for that. When in fact, 30 years of data shows it's not linear at all. It's quite the opposite. So, the studies that they have done, it's not an economic impact study. It's actually an assumption. I would go back one step further. I think it's important for everyone to know that at the June 20th, 2022 final meeting of the Water Commission, where this was forwarded to the CRD. Actually, at the time, one of the water commissioners, ex-Victoria Councillor Jeff Young, made a motion because he had concerns, and his explicit concerns were that this is kind of based, he had read the report, one of the few there who had, and said that this is loosely based on incomplete data. Our own data doesn't really validate this. So he said, I have concerns with this being put forward as a plan. He said, I have a fear that in the next agenda down the road, when I'm not part of this commission or part of a council, that somebody's going to put this forward and say, hey, this was a plan, it was voted on, this is what everybody should do. That was the fear he expressed in that meeting. And enough of the other water commissioners agreed with him that they pass an amendment to amend the name of it, not from a plan, but as a guideline. It was meant to be a loose guide. That amendment was never picked up when it was forwarded to the actual CRD board. It was presented as the water plan. That mysteriously vanished into the ether somewhere. And that should really alarm a lot of people that enough people at that water commission meeting went, yeah, you're right. This shouldn't be taken as gospel. This isn't the plan we should build a $2 billion development over. This is just a loose framework and we need to do a lot more work still. They all agreed, they voted for it, and that amendment just vanished, just disappeared. And it's a matter of public record. I've listened to it. I've listened to the recording and looked at the meeting minutes. So that to me tells me that there's more work to be done. So again, not opposed to the, what potentially might be needed, going back to your question, but that economic impact study doesn't exist. And, the numbers don't add up. It's not a linear water usage chart at all. It's quite the opposite. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So I am curious because I was on the Water Commission for many years and I haven't been there for quite a few now. But we did used to have an agricultural water rate, a bulk water rate that supported farmers. And I think that is very important to ensure that remains a part of our planning. We live very fortunately in a lovely part of the world where many of the properties are large enough or fertile enough to actually produce food and things that are beneficial to our whole region. So whether it's out on the peninsula or it's here in Metchosin or Sooke or even in a community garden, we're all benefiting from sharing in that agricultural use. And I am concerned that we're looking at a very large, very expensive program without considering the financial impacts of it. Because really, when a lot of folks that I talk to about the housing crisis talk not so much about a housing crisis as much as an affordability crisis. And that is really what we're seeing. And when we're looking at affordable and rental housing, that is a big chunk of the money that is required to make it exist in the first place. And we're talking in the hundreds of thousands of dollars for some of the affordable housing that we've provided funding to, has been to alleviate some of the fees and charges that they have to pay up front. So we really need to get it right, and it doesn't have to be finger pointing to say, well, hang on a minute, this potentially could be very damaging to the growth of Greater Victoria if we don't get this right. So let's take a moment, take a breath, and make sure that we do get it right. We had a very robust system of demand management trying to achieve water conservancies when I was on the Water Commission, and we worked hard to increase both the supply and the quality of water that was available when we raised the dam back in 2003 when we finished that work. So I think it's important that we get this right, and it is a big foundation for a successful housing initiative in Greater Victoria.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a big nut to crack, quite frankly. And typically when something like this comes forward to me for a decision point, it's accompanied with literature to support it or some background information. And it's such a big nut to crack across the table like this in really a finite amount of time. I do have a few questions, like where does this live right now? And I know this might be for the Chief Administrator or yourself, Your Worship, or our Water Commissioner, but where is it currently in the process and who owns this? Because I can tell you that, I mean, we don't own this. This isn't an us thing. So I'd love to know where this, whose desk is this on at this moment?
I'll take a crack at it, and Mr. Earl, you can certainly correct me on it. We're on step 2 of 10 or 11 steps. We're step 2 right now, so we're early in the process. So I've asked some questions about, for example, we've also heard that the province, not formally, have stepped in and said, yeah, we're going to be responsible for some of these costs too. What that looks like, I don't know. I hope it's like the sewage treatment plant. It's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Hopefully the federal government kicks in some money. So those discussions haven't even started. So all I know is that we're only on step 2, which is out and they're briefing each of the councils. So very early in the.
So this has gone from the Water Commission to the CRD board in general, is that right? Is that where it lives now?
It's already been approved by the CRD board back in 2022. So we're, there's a lot of assumptions that people knew what they were doing at that time.
Right.
Let me put it that way. Right. I took the opportunity last weekend to read the whole report. Wow. And it was interesting because engineer to engineer, this is engineers fighting with each other too. So it's very unprofessional what's happening right now. Jonathan Huguet, who is, as Councillor Ward has stated, he's got lots of credibility, but this is Stantec too. I mean, the engineering company, and who am I to argue with them? And it's not within our ethical code, not unless they change it, where we're supposed to call each other out. It's just not supposed to happen. It's like doctors right now. So who do you believe? And I read it, and it sort of made sense. I must agree. Some of the assumptions were, yeah, but what if we get it wrong? What if we get it wrong? And so that's the part, that's the art in this right now, because there is no science behind that right now, to tell you the truth. And that's where I was having difficulties, and, you know, you go, well, we paid these guys a lot of money to do this properly. So that's where I sat on it, but from a technical point of view, and I'm very glad Council Ward has made the point that this isn't about, you know, if we need a filtration plant or not, because it was pretty clear to me and from what I read that, yep, I do understand the need, the technical need for it. Now, as far as the other parts of it, the assumptions on how they've made, you know, what our water usage is, like I said, there was no science behind that. So I don't know which way is right or which way is wrong. I certainly, if anything, I'd probably err on the side of being safe, I guess. Because we get it wrong. I don't know. So we're benefiting from people that way back when, from what I see right now, that had this, you know, the whole idea of, you know, building up the water levels in the dam, and we're actually benefiting from that today. And that's something that, you know, those arguments probably happened back then, but who knows? So I hope that answers.
Thank you for muddying the waters even further, Your Worship, but
Not unless Mr. Earl, if you have anything
I
else
think
to add to it.
I have no specific knowledge to answer the question. I am aware, though, the CRD has invited council members, including yourself, Councillor Jansen, to a meeting this Friday, March 1st at 9 a.m., where I'm confident they'll be able to answer that question.
in the middle of the work week.
That's correct.
Thank you. So, Your Worship, thank you for that. And if the engineers are struggling with it, far be it from me to weigh in on the technical side of all this. I think it's a stretch to think that we're not going to have some kind of filtration for our water in the future, clearly. As we were late to the table with our sewage treatment, but I'm conflicted because, you know, the CRD is still trying to figure out what to do with biosolids from the last fancy plant we built. So again, I'm conflicted, but the reality is, you know, we have this water commission, which is truly supposed to be independent to advise the CRD to the benefit of all of us. And I mean, if we can't rely on what's happening there and what's happening at the CRD proper, then, you know, I'm not sure what we can add here other than doing our own filtration plant for the community, which is obviously not possible. But, and you're right, I did make a note here, Your Worship, that we are benefiting as a region for some good decision-making that was done as far back as what I've heard from previous Councillor Logan, that good decisions that were made as far back as the turn of the century with regard to securing that property for a future reservoir. And we are enjoying that to this day, again, with the upgrades that have come along the way. So, you know, I have a tough time sort of taking a knowledgeable decision on this, understanding that it's early days, and I suspect that a lot of these answers will come along the way when we get to step 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and secure some funding. And it boggles the imagination to think that this ends up getting to the end, step 11, without significant consultation with our First Nations neighbors, because that's the law in this province. So those are some of my thoughts, and they might be a bit random, but I apologize if I've confused anybody, because I'm confused. Thank you.
Thanks very much. What I'm going to do at this point in time, because we're getting into the discussion of the motion, so I'm going to assume it's okay, Councillor Ward, that you're making the motion for these for the recommendation, and Councillor Jordison, you're seconding it. Okay. So now we're into the discussion then. If that's okay. Okay. Councillor Jordison.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that the sky is not falling. I think respectfully, I think it's important to note that the only option that came out of this plan that was developed was an engineering option. There's no other options that were presented or thought of. And I think the proof is in the pudding. They say that this is a guide to the plan, that that they've agreed to use this as a guide, and they'll even state that now at the Water Commission, the CRD, that this is a plan that they're using as a guide. But why the push for the DCCs at this point? It's just, it doesn't make any sense, especially with all the unknown answers with the housing and that sort of thing. Also, I did speak with Dr. Benuzik and Dr. Gustafson from Island Health, and I think what's important to note is that filtration will be required one day when the Leech River is integrated with our water source, but currently that's not necessary, and it's proven that it's not going to be necessary for a while because we're not using the water consumption that they had based the plan on originally. So we're not coming near or close to using enough water. So I think it's important to note that, the only time that Island Health believes that filtration will be required is when the water from the Leech River is introduced, unless things change drastically with the quality of our water. So that's why I just, it could potentially extend the need for filtration for many years. So just wanted to tell you that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Motion, I would automatically have the floor. But,
Absolutely.
So I wanted to speak to the motion next here.
Okay, sure. No, you're on.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak to the motion specifically quickly because I think we've lost sight about what we're doing here. Councillor Jensen, I think you provoked me to bring this up because I think we've lost sight of what the objective is. This isn't a motion that's on the floor to ask or demand the CRD to stop work, to put this aside, to revisit it, to come up with a new plan. I think you need to review the wording here and realize that, what this motion is doing is asking them to consider an unbiased third-party economic impact study, something that hasn't been done. It's asking them to review the study assumptions, to take another look, to make sure the numbers add up. And lastly, it's requesting that they consider a bulk water rate support for agricultural land users and for affordable and rental housing. So by moving this motion forward, we aren't drawing a line in the sand and saying, Colwood doesn't support this, this is a brick wall. As you stated, Councillor Jansen, this isn't our bailiwick, right? Like, we don't have the controlling authority over this. We are just one voice in a sea of voices in the CRD. So this motion seeks to politely ask that, hey, do a bit more homework. We owe it to the taxpayers. I mean, the Huggett report, you wanted more information, speaks directly to, and this isn't disputed by the CRD, a 500% increase in the cost of water to residents. So not just on development or impacting developers, on everybody in this room, everybody across this CRD, 500% more in your cost of water, right? That's not insignificant. So are we actually being unreasonable to say, hey, can you do an economic impact study? Can we get a sense of what this really is? What is the impact on affordable housing when you do something like that? And, Huggett used, for example, the North Shore wastewater treatment plant in North Vancouver, which followed similar methodology based on assumptions. And the cost on that was thrown out at $770 million. Now, as they're approaching, well, not even approaching completion, but as they continue on now, they're closer to $4 billion. In speaking with people in the construction industry, on this, Huggett and myself and many others have, look at this. And and I would draw on the people in this room and say, how many times have you seen a Class D estimate that comes in on budget, right? $2 billion right now is going to be a 500% increase in our water rates. Imagine when this project by 2037 goes up by 30%, 50%, 60%. What if it hits $4 billion? Can you imagine the one-time hit or two-time or 10-time hit to everybody across this region? So while we're looking at this as, okay, David versus Goliath up against the CRD, they've made their bed. Are we being unreasonable to just say, hey, slow it down? Nobody's saying, no, we won't need treatment. I'd be the first one to say, yeah, at some point we're going to. But the key is, at some point, make sure it's based on data and make sure that you've done all the studies so you can trot out the information. The tail's wagging the dog a little bit on here. And as Huggett had said, it's just they're embarking on this DCC project before doing any of the other work and then hoping to circle around later and go, oh yeah, see, we needed most of that money. you know, but we don't really know. And I think it's fair to say, hey, we're just asking you as polite citizens over here representing our taxpayers and the taxpaying public to do this the justice it deserves. I mean, if it was a $10 million road project or something, never even appear on this table, right? You know, doing some paving on the Goose or something, but this is $2 billion at its lowest amount. Who knows where it goes from there? They'll tell you that maybe that's a high estimate, but I would say draw on your own experience, everybody in this room, and say, okay, how many times does the estimate go that direction? So we're just asking nicely. That's all we're doing here.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I knocked you out there, Councillor Grove. Councillor Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on the one hand, I have issues with the approach here with this motion because I guess I have more faith in the plan as it exists and the approach I understood that was being taken, which was sort of a cautious move forward, and this is very early stages, so that we would grind into the details sometime down the road. You said you were step 2, so presumably we would move further from that. The agricultural water rate, I assume that was already in place. The economic impact, I'm not sure quite on a plan of this scale that what can be done there. Anything 10 years out is a bit of a stretch these days. 30 years is more than is even humanly possible. There's just no way. It's too far off in the future. I'm not sure what we're going to gain with that. The water usage rates dropped since the mid-90s due to the restrictions that were brought in due to the fact that the dam wasn't large enough, and there was a huge campaign through the 90s and 2000s, the CRD, to convince people to stop watering their lawns in the summer and washing their cars. And the codes changed significantly to include low water use heads in the showers and small toilets. Even the dual flush toilets were banned, and you just have the low flush version. That is all the low hanging fruit for the drop in the water usage rate. So I think that's a bit of a misnomer to suggest that the water usage rate projections are not viable because the low hanging fruit's been picked. And if you look at the water report in the last few months since September of last year, I know it's very recent, but the daily water use rates are up to 3 million liters a day over just 2022. So it's starting, I believe, to be turning the corner. If I were to look at it and just use my thin bit of experience, I would suggest that we're turning the corner, and now the growth will drive a significant increase in demand. But anyhow, after all that's said and done, I think I'm looking forward to the Friday meeting, because I think a lot of answers could be found at that meeting perhaps. But I hear too, Councillor Ward, and what you're saying about asking for more, that I agree with. I suppose I could support the motion on that basis, because basically we're just asking them to consider these things. It's a letter to the CRD, I suppose.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I think there's a lot of misinformation, and one of the main reasons why I think this is very important is because I don't think we're all on a level playing field in terms of what we know and as members of council. And when it comes to citizens, they can only speak up when we speak up so that they have the information. So I think it's really critical that we get all the right information. And if absolutely nothing else comes from this, then providing more information to our citizens, that will be a good thing. In my term, which is about 10 years on the Water Commission, we were raising water rates, and we were raising them not because we needed to, as much as because we needed to incentivize people to conserve water. And in conserving more water, then we leave more there for the next development that comes in. And really development has changed a great deal. We're not getting the same, half-acre parcel with a house on it anymore that we used to. We're looking at townhouses and apartment buildings, and there's a very different water requirement for those. So I think it's important that we stick to utilizing only one planet's worth of everything, including water, and try to leave some for future generations as well, and that we do that in a financially responsible way. And we're going to have to plan for the future. We're going to have to plan just like we do for our landfill, just like we do for everything. We have to plan long-term. So I'm in full support of getting as much information as possible out there, because we are the leading edge in terms of being able to provide that information to our citizens.
Thank you very much. I'm going to speak before you, Councillor Jensen, because I haven't had a chance to speak yet. So aside from answering your question. So this is the way I feel. I'm supportive of actually the first recommendation and the third recommendation for sure. I'm just having problems, and maybe it's my understanding of what the second part of the recommendation is. But I'm going to make a suggestion here for council to consider. I think you've made a great point right now, Councillor Day, about what playing field everyone's on. And, I have a different understanding also because the math didn't work out when I looked at the numbers, okay? So when I asked the question, they in fact said, well, the number's higher because they did put an escalation in, a cost of escalation. Yeah, 2% per year compounded. So I sort of said, okay, I now understand that number a little bit better. But what my suggestion here is that we do have this opportunity where all councils are invited to attend March 1st. Unfortunately, it's during the day. And my suggestion is if as many as the councillors can go on to that call and ask the pertinent questions that have to be answered, because we certainly didn't get it when they came to do the presentation, because that was a different aim to that. And, I think we all got shocked by it and got sticker shock. So my suggestion was that we would defer this motion. I'm ready to get behind it, but I just want to make sure that I have a clear understanding of, some of these questions that we have going on. Because some people, like you said, on council have a little more information than others. And I'd like to get that common understanding. So that's what I'm going to suggest at this point in time. And I'll put the appropriate motion. I'll just take it around the table right now. Councillor Jensen?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I would second your motion to defer because I was going to say that I find it difficult to take a decision on anything here until I do hear what is going to come before us on Friday. So perhaps we're maybe just a little bit out of order. I'm happy to consider all of these at the appropriate moment. So I would support the motion to defer. Thank you.
Okay. I guess I just made that motion. Councillor Jensen just seconded it. So that's where my head is at this point in time. Councillor Ward. It is. You're right. Yeah, there is a motion on the floor. Don't want to necessarily defeat it. That's the problem.
Yeah,
But I
through the
can-
chair, I can appreciate where you're coming from there. I think for me, I won't support an amendment because I think the information has been out there. It's just a question of how diligent do you want to be to look into it? How informed do you want to be on this? This is a major item around here. It's been going for months, and so my concern is, when the CRD first came before us, they came with instructions to, if you have any questions, email them in, talk to us after. They didn't want really this to go very public. The goal here is to get it to third reading with the CRD board a lot faster than step 2 of 11 sounds like. They're looking to do that within a year, to get it before the CRD board, third reading, push it through. And the sort of road show that I call it, that the CRD is on, going to council to council to share their perspective, is very much about getting people in line. And I've heard that from other councillors and other municipalities, which is get everybody on board. We all need to row in the same direction. And frankly, I don't buy that. And my concern is, okay, we hear their perspective, but again, it's one perspective. If we're going to sit and listen to the CRD tell us why we should, get in line behind us, then we should also make it mandatory reading to look through the Huggett report, for example. Look into some things that really stand out, for example, that, if you don't do the depth of investigation, you don't realize, like, why would they push this through on the last meeting of the Water Commission in 2022 with such a sense of urgency when we're talking decades out from now? And people have asked that question and thought, why? Well, you know what else passed right at that same time? The Missing Middle Housing Initiative in Victoria, which turned out to be a big fizzle. It didn't work. It was horribly planned. But at the time, there was a real need to get this through because the CRD realized, well, single family homes get charged for water hookup at the point of subdivision, but multi-unit buildings are different. You get DCCs on those when you're issuing the building permit. So all of a sudden there was this thought that there's going to be a flood of missing middle housing built across the region. Victoria would start, everywhere else, single family lots in Colwood, everywhere would become fourplexes, sixplexes. The cash on the table, like, surely got a whole bunch of people in finance at the CRD up out of their seats. So they rammed this thing through with no debate. Debate was shut down by the chair, despite, some very, very good objection to get it through, because the fear was we're going to leave millions of dollars on the table that we can get. We can do the homework later because there's a lot of money out there with this missing middle. So my concern is, yeah, we can listen to the CRD's propaganda show, but we're missing all of the other investigation. And I don't know how we get that. There's a different layer of knowledge on this because some people have chosen to dig way deeper into it than others. And, so I don't support putting it off just to hear the CRD's version. I know their version. I've heard their version. I'm going to stand up for taxpayers and I'm going to oppose that motion, and I'm going to continue to oppose what the CRD is trying to do. Because I think at the end of the day, I ran on a platform of transparency and fiscal responsibility, and what they're doing really doesn't smell right. So that's where I sit.
And the problem though, Councillor Ward, in all honesty, I've got a copy of that Huggett report now. I don't think, and I think you do, I don't think everyone here has got a copy of it. So in fairness, I'm just saying, in fairness, not everyone here has seen that. So that's the only point I'm trying to make. Why I said we may be doing the same thing that they're doing, is rushing into a decision. So I'm not saying I'm not supportive of it. To get behind the second item though, I think it's fair that these people, everyone around council table, gets to sit at this presentation and ask the questions, ask the tough questions, ask away. And I just don't want to be premature on this, but that's just my opinion. And Councillor Jordison, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, they haven't been able to answer my questions that I've put before them. And I don't agree with deferring this either. I think it's, we can all go as a council and hear their information on Friday, but what about the taxpayers? What about the citizens of Colwood? That's what we're here for. And I think there's a lot of people that don't know what's happening, and it's unfortunate that it is this way. But like I say, there's no rush. So if there's no rush, why not just slow it down, and we wouldn't be going right into this. They have a work plan, and the work plan keeps proceeding itself regardless of the concerns. And, another thing that I want to mention is that I've been on the Water Commission for over a year now, and it took until Councillor Ward made this an issue and brought it forward to the public to realize what was happening. And then it became more of an issue when I put a motion forward. And now they're holding a meeting. Like, where was the information before? Where has it ever been provided? Like, it's not a joke when they say that the actual report was not provided to the Water Advisory Committee. It wasn't provided to the Water Commission. It wasn't even provided to the CRD. Yet people made a decision on a $2 billion plan. So I'm just not okay with it. I don't think that there's any implications in suggesting that this be done by the CRD and the Water Commission, and you know, try to get some more answers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Jensen?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'll be brief, but you know, I got to push back a little bit when I'm hearing that the only way that we can serve the interests of our constituents is to support this motion, and that's it. Like, I'm going to educate myself, and that means hearing from everybody, including what they have to say. I haven't heard it yet. So I am going to do my due diligence, and I'm going to start with the people that are making the proposal. Further, a couple of points. First off, I thought, did I hear along the way that a motion similar to this went to the Water Commission? If there's a result there, I'd love to know what that is. I don't think we have anything here that says what that might be. And then that's about it. But Mr. Mayor, and I'm not sure what the corporate services would have to say, but you made a motion to defer. I supported that. Does that not end debate on the motion that's before us?
Corporate officer, please.
Thank you, through your worship. No, there's a motion on the floor, so a motion to defer cannot happen right now.
Okay, thank you.
You
So
have
it
to
was
deal
out
with
of
the motion at hand.
It was out of order then. Thank you.
Yes, it's totally out of order.
So I can appreciate that. So I would make a motion here. If this motion is going to move forward as presented here, I'm going to put forward a motion to sever, please. There's 3 or 4 items, what have you there. I think they should be spoken to individually. Thank you.
We can make that amendment to that, right? He can make the motion to amend. That's in order.
Yes, as long as that is fine with the mover and the seconder, we can do it in severed motion.
So, okay, yep, so you're making the motion to sever it in 3 parts then, or?
3.
Sorry, Councillor Jensen.
Thank you. There's a lot to take in there in one mouthful. I would prefer if we parse it out. I would make the motion that we sever those 3 items. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder to that motion? Okay, Councillor Olson seconds. Discussion on the amendment. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I believe that severing the motion is taking more valuable time, and I didn't see a willingness by the mover or the seconder to entertain that. So I guess I'm confused. We're asking for more information through this motion. We're asking for them to engage an unbiased third party to look at the economic impact. We're asking that the core costs and assumptions be reviewed prior to any implementation of the development cost charge, and that they consider the bulk water rates for agriculture and DCC waivers for affordable and rental housing. Those are the 3 items in the agenda that we're asking for. And I'm just having a hard time envisioning that the time spent on doing that all individually will lead to a better result.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Grove?
Mayor, I think that
On the amendment.
sorry,
On the amendment.
on the amendment, which is, or we're not talking about the severance. Severing?
To separate, yes.
Yeah, I think that, for me, that piles on another layer of work that I wouldn't particularly support or find useful.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the amendment, which is to sever this motion into 3 parts. 1, 2, 3. Okay. All those in favor of severing the motion? Well, I just need my discussion point here, discussion on this. And the reason I'm going to favor this is because I like 1 and 3. I do. I'm behind those right away. The second one, I just see this is a contest now. One engineer against another engineer, and this has been through that process. I don't know. And this is why I'm having problems, because that's a lot of money for that second part of the motion. And I just want to be convinced, because I know what questions I'm going to be asking Friday. I know that right now. So anyways, that's my discussion point on it. Councillor Grove, before I
Yeah, it's
call the question.
my turn to get confused now. So we're talking about this perhaps being deferred.
That's not
the severance,
Yeah.
but if it's to be deferred, then the severance isn't necessary. This is what I'm saying.
That's true, but that's not the motion on the table.
So then I can support severing. I agree completely with what you say, Mr. Mayor, about the different elements in the as Councillor Jansen said, that break it up, sever it up and discuss different elements. But as a whole, that's the more efficient route to answers here. We do have the meeting on Friday. I would like to get more information, and severing is not moving me toward that a solution there, because that can come downstream.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Jordison?
I just want to clarify in case there is some confusion that the third party, the unbiased third party to conduct an economic impact study and the third party review could be the same person. I don't think we're expecting two different people to do like two different. I'll defer to Councillor Ward on that, but I guess I just want to state that the DCC portion is a huge component. And if we don't do a peer review study on a $2 billion plan, then when do we do it? Like, honestly, that just doesn't make any sense to me. And this isn't a war between engineers. This is, Stantec tends to make a lot of money, excuse me, from this plan. And, you know, a peer review, I don't think is unreasonable.
Thank you very much. No, just the point on that one. You're not going to have the same people doing A and B. There's no way. I wouldn't trust an engineer to be doing the economic impact study. I'd rather have my CFO do it, to tell you the truth. So, you know, I see a distinct difference between the two. So that's how I see it. Okay. Councillor Ward, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think, you know, maybe in the interest of trying to move it forward, one of the missing components here that I'd actually thought of, and Councillor Jordison, I had thought of adding by amendment, was the missing consultation with First Nations as well, because this was an 11th hour thing that came up after our motion that the Malahat First Nation, Sooke First Nation, and Beecher Bay all submitted letters to the Water Commission objecting to this and the fact that they hadn't been consulted. So depending on the outcome of the vote on the severance one, I'd be looking to maybe put a amendment on the floor to the second component of this, that hypothetically speaking, if that scenario were to arise, that would, instead of specifically stating a third-party review of study assumptions, that it just asks for a continued review of third-party assumptions and core items together with consultation with First Nations before moving forward with any proposed DCC or expenditure. So just saying, I think there's some room in the language to maybe make it a little less onerous, but that gets the message across, but then adds in the First Nations component, which I think is critical and missing. So in terms of how that relates to speaking to the motion on the floor right now, the severance, is that I don't support severing it. My goal would be to take it in a different direction.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess the way I'm analyzing the whole situation here, folks, is I'm going to vote everything down. I think, you know, it's clear to me. It's very clear to me. You know, it's the wrong message that we're sending here by defeating each other here on this. I think it's pretty clear right now that, in my viewpoint, that what's the difference? We give ourselves 2 more weeks. We get the presentation. We'd like everyone to delve into this a little more and engage in it. I know you don't have to read the full report, but at least if you look at the Huggett report and put context behind this, I think, you'll understand one way or the other. You're going to form your own opinions. But I just think that not everyone is equipped here. And I give you full kudos, Councillor Ward and Councillor Jordison, because you've done your homework. So I'm not knocking this right now, but just to be fair, we're jumping to conclusions in the way I see it right now, the same way that Councillor Ward, as you said, that maybe the CRD and the past water boards who have made these decisions have not really done their homework, and then they were ill prepared. I know how I feel right now, and I'm just struggling with that second part of the motion a little bit right now. The rest I can support, but I think it's going to be all fractured here. So I guess this is why I was thinking of the deferment right now, because 2 weeks, can we wait 2 weeks? It's the next council meeting. Councillor Ward.
I would ask through the chair, maybe the CAO can correct me if I'm wrong, but there are motions which take precedence over a motion on the floor. So a motion to refer, not defer, but refer would take precedent over the existing motion, if I'm not mistaken. And a motion to refer would defer until advice can be sought from another body, which in this case would provide us a means to suggest that we don't hear this again until we've had that opportunity to hear from another body, which in this case would be the CRD presentation. So I would be happy to make the motion to refer if that, in fact, if I've read it correctly from my understanding of Robert's rules, I believe it's accurate.
You're actually right. You're actually right on that.
So I would move to refer it until such time as this body can hear from the CRD, as well as view the Jonathan Huggett report in its entirety, which I'd be happy to share with everyone.
Okay. Can I get a seconder on that? Okay, Councillor Grove. Okay, discussion on the refer. Councillor Jensen.
I think I'll yield, your worship, and I'll wait till it comes back.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on referring motion?
Your worship,
Yes, please.
it would be helpful for administration to understand the referral to the CRD. Is that referral to the Friday meeting where answers will be sought? Or is the referral for them to come and present to us?
The referral is the presentation on Friday, is what I understood, if we want to move this forward. Is that right, Mr. Ward? Is that okay? Okay. Councillor Day.
Thank you. If memory serves correctly, the only appropriate debate on a motion to refer is the appropriateness of the referral, and yours need to specify the date and time that it's being referred to. I thought that what was happening was we're referring this to the next council meeting.
Yes.
And after this Friday, we will have had an opportunity to hear from the CRD, as well as receive any other information on this item, and then come back. So I think that motion is to refer this to the next council meeting.
That's correct. You understood that, right? Okay, thank you, Councillor Day. Any other discussion on this? I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the referral motion, please. Any opposed? Seeing none, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 8.2.
Good evening. So council has been provided a report with background information and copies of each of the policies proposed for rescinding. So with respect to the overtime policies referenced as Appendix 1 and 2, a new administrative policy titled HR 010 Overtime Administration is included as Appendix 3 in the report. And this new administrative policy updates and formalizes current administrative practices while maintaining the original council policy intention that overtime and associated costs are managed effectively, that was contained within those original policies. With respect to the proposed rescinding of the council policies addressing discipline, that's Appendix 4 and 5 with your report. Since the adoption of those policies, council endorsed in 2018 and the city introduced and maintains dedicated HR services internally, which provide support to managers in navigating the complexities of the employee and labor relations matters that warrant discipline. So there are general frameworks outlined by collective agreement language, HR best practices, evolving employment case law, and therefore the need for specific policy guidance in this area could be reconsidered through this report. So I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Council, any questions? Council Ward. Oops.
Through the chair, thank you, Candace, appreciate it. I was actually going to move the staff recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Seconder, please. Okay, thank you, Council Grove. Discussion? Okay, Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just thought of one question because this used to be sort of a duty of council, a very difficult duty of council to create and administer these policies. And now it's moving to our HR professionals, which is great. But if we, now that we're more or less taking a step back and leaving this in the hands of staff, I'd just like to ask how and when this will come up for review with council in the future.
Well, I would say that certainly with matters of significance that, council is informed. There are processes in place to inform council through in-camera meetings, that sort of thing.
Perhaps I'm looking for the bigger picture, not so much specific individual cases, but more how are we doing in terms of our costs and, the economic benefits of working as a city with an HR professional. Are we achieving the savings that we had hoped to achieve, et cetera, and those kinds of benchmarks? Is that something that we would do at service review, or is that something that we would have to initiate specifically?
I would say that there are additional metrics that we could potentially include at service review, but it would be helpful to understand specifically what council's looking for. And perhaps, Robert, do you have anything to add on that?
Thank you, and through the chair, Councillor Day. During bargaining, where we have items during collective bargaining that substantively affect costs related to issues in and around there, council will be informed. And at service review, when issues manifest such that we're looking to make a change at the policy or administrative level, we will often lift that up as a challenge or opportunity and seek direction from council on the importance of making a change in that area. So annually at service review, and then every time the organization enters into a new or rebargained collective agreement, we will inform council relative to changes that may affect these areas from a policy perspective.
Okay, I guess I think for myself, what I'm looking for is to try to achieve that understanding of how the way we do business impacts the cost of doing business. It's basically where I'm looking at. We've tried to manage without HR professionals before and do it in a way that was cost effective for citizens of Colwood. And as we're moving to HR professionals, that's kind of leaving our grasp. We're a little less aware of things. So I'm just looking to find ways to bring that awareness back into our thinking as members of council, seeking to work in the most economically viable way possible. So I think I will need to remember to ask about that at service review.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Day. Seeing no other questions, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, unanimous, motion carried. Thank you very much, Candace. Move on to 8.3, rezoning 2057 to 2076 Sooke Road. Desiree, you're on.
Thank you and good evening, Mayor and Council. So the next item in your agenda is a request from the applicant to amend the rezoning conditions for 2054 through 76 Sooke Road. So bylaw 1989 is the bylaw that amends the subject properties from the residential 1 zone to the TGA 1 zone. It received first, second, and third reading in the summer of last year and has been held at third reading pending the confirmation of registering the road dedication, the lot consolidation, and the development agreement. So the applicant is working towards registering the road dedication and the development agreement, but they're looking for a little bit of flexibility with respect to the lot consolidation requirement and are requesting that the lot consolidation be postponed from prior to adoption of bylaw 1989 to prior to building permit issuance. So staff do not have any concerns with this proposed amendment, given that without lot consolidation, no buildings can be built on the lands. Given the size of the lots, it needs to be consolidated. So we're supportive of this request. And if you have any questions, I'm available to answer, as well as the applicant is here as well.
Thanks very much, Desiree. Questions? Councillor Day?
Thank you. One of my concerns with this easement of the regulations for lot consolidation is that a number of developments, when they do come forward, they are for sale. And there's often quite a big difference between the person who fought for and brought a proposal forward and how they might proceed with the development versus somebody who purchased it after the fact and maybe didn't have to go through all of that blood, sweat, and tears that's involved. And it's a real concern for me because when I see projects that have come forward by other than the developer who brought them forward initially, they often aren't as dialed in to the site location or the nuances that went with that development approval. And so I'm concerned that this is just potentially incentivizing basically acquiring the zoning on a piece of land and then placing that for sale. And that's a real concern for me, having seen that happen a number of times over the years. Just wonder if you could comment on that in terms of the benefit to the city.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Day. I'm not sure I can comment on the benefit to the city, but I can say that past rezoning applications have considered requiring lot consolidation prior to building permit issuance. So this isn't too far out of line with what we have done in the past. And the reason behind requiring lot consolidation for this rezoning application prior to adoption was because we thought that it would streamline the process and make it a little bit easier for the applicant to register the road dedication so that they wouldn't have to do it on each individual lot. It would be on one set of lots. So in terms of like the concerns and benefits, I don't think I'm kind of neutral on that. I don't think there's any issues with approving or postponing this requirement to prior to building permit issuance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Jensen,
I'll move the staff recommendation, your worship.
seconder, please. Councillor Olson. Discussion, any other? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Day and Councillor Ward, sorry about that. Okay, we move to item 8.4, and I guess I better motivate this one. Sorry about that. This is the development variance permit for Tradewinds Avenue. I took the opportunity to actually watch the video twice. And I must admit, the Planning and Land Use Committee asked all the right questions. It was excellent. Thank you very much. You guys did a great job. And just the end result was a bit shocking to me, I guess. Mainly because I'm thinking of my past experience on council, and that they shrank the number down to 0.15, and I guess I was angry about that, to tell you the truth. And then to see that, that the original request by the developer was to reduce the number of visitor spaces by, it worked out to about 67%. And I just went, wow, that's a stretch. Normally when we get a variance, you get 4 or 5, like it's small. But this was a 67% decrease. So all the right questions were asked. I must admit, they were fantastic. And it was just non sequitur, as Latin would say, did not follow in my own logic. And even with the new number they settled on, which was 0.08, that's still a 47% decrease in the number of visitor spots. Okay, I respect why. I listened to the committee very carefully. The green space and the amenities, fantastic. It really was. I'm happy for the people living in that development. I think that's great. But in my eyes, it was to the detriment of the neighborhood, the rest of the neighborhood, because I looked at what the future development is. You have single development homes just to the southwest. I hope I got my directions right. You have all those single. And so, and in fact, I looked at that one chart. I kept on going back to your chart about what the study that was carried out. And I noticed that you said during peak times, but the question was never asked, what is peak time? And in fact, I'll tell you, Besington Way, and that's what got my curiosity. So the last couple of nights, I've actually walked Besington at 8:30 at night. And if that's peak time, well, I'm going to tell you, it's more than 0.01 that you stated in the report. So I'll vehemently argue that number. So I was just, so the whole point is I'm just bringing this up at this point in time because it's a second sober thought. I'm just one person. It just bothered me that we have 336 units going in there. And it wasn't clear to me. I don't think you had it defined. I see Matthew there. It wasn't clearly defined. I know you said this, the majority are studio and 1 bedroom. And okay, so I understand that. That's what was stated. So, but you never said what that breakout is. So because I keep on looking at Eliza, and we didn't give you a variance there. You went to 0.15. And I heard some of the arguments that were stated. But I guess I got a bee in my bonnet because this is a very volatile item with the residents of Lower Royal Bay. I know I get enough phone calls and I get enough emails, and so I understand this, and so it just bothered me a little bit. First of all, what are the peak times you use? Because it's not the peak times. I can tell you that right now. I can go to my neighborhood right now and tell you that that whole Besington Way is full. I mean, it's visitors, it's probably illegal suites, whatever, but there's not a place to be had there. The second thing, I know that you did a notification of 75-meter radius, but there's no one living there. So who the heck did you survey there? I think it should have been much bigger because there's a lot of residents that will be affected down there. And I'm sorry to be a pain on this one because, I mean, it's a beautiful development. It's going to be a very attractive and maybe I should move in there, but I can tell you right now, I think it's to the detriment. So the people that get to live in that particular development, it's great. I'm gonna tell you, it's gonna look great. I mean, all the amenities you have there. And the other part that I sort of went, ooh, so the amenities are there for the people that are residents. It makes sense. They're paying for it. But then the expense of that is we're eliminating visitor parking and now they're parking out on the street. It always happens. And no matter what we say, this is, you know, the numbers that are being used. And I can understand if we were downtown Victoria, I would totally support this. I really would, because all the amenities that are there, but we certainly aren't there. Unknown for the transit right now, you know, when they're going to bring, you know, frequent transit service there. And it really is a big question mark. I can't even get an answer, and I'm the mayor. And so that really bothered me. So I guess that's where my head is. And I just wanted to bring this to council because I really appreciate, and I sincerely mean this, the planning and land use really, the best questions were asked by everyone on the committee. It's just that the logical conclusion, I couldn't buy into it. And I may be outnumbered here and say Levy, but I am concerned that, you know, having 27 parking spaces for visitor parking spaces for 336 units just doesn't cut it. Like, you know, we're having people scream at us now. So, and we're only going to make it worse in my eyes. So, you know, the 0.15 was set at one time. And, you know, I think we should be at 0.15, but that's my opinion. I can understand, like we've had variances where people say, well, we got pillars in the way and underground parking, so we're going to drop a couple. Sure, I'll give that variance. But to have, you know, where we're sitting now, it's a 47% decrease in the current bylaw. I just have a hard time with that. And so I'm listening to the you know, the residents in that area. And unfortunately, it doesn't go beyond your 75 meters. They're the people, and the people in the future that'll be living right by this new development, they're going to be affected, in my humble opinion. Anyways, I just put that out right now, and I see your hand up, Matthew, so please.
Thank you, Mayor Kobayashi, and through the chair, I appreciate it and appreciate the feedback. And I agree, all the work the land planning committee did and all the questions they asked were definitely good ones. So I can agree with you there. You know, I think the way we've seen it is we've based it also a little bit on Eliza. Like you bring up Eliza, and what we found there is that we're going to have way more visitor parking because there was an uptake on the parking. The resident parking, there wasn't up to it. We're completely overparked from a resident standpoint there. Which is costly when you're building underground stalls at $55,000 a stall. And that's not to say, you know, that's our responsibility to meet that bylaw. But at the end of the day, like we've talked a lot about affordability, and of course, all that cost has to get passed on to somebody. I guess our focus is we're trying to maintain this great green space and amenity. And, you know, if we do need to park to the visitor stalls, we're not going to be able to put them underground. Partly because of cost, but also because in my experience, all the multifamily I've worked on is when you put the visitor stalls underground, people don't really use them because they're required to get buzzed in by residents, they let in by residents, and they regardless are going to default to the street parking, which I just want to point out, I think we put it in there, is there's about 26 surrounding stalls in the laybys just on those three streets that surround the development. So, you know, what we're trying to do is make it a beautiful community, obviously a beautiful site, not look like a parking lot, hopefully. And that's kind of why we were looking for the variance, but also just based on our experience at Eliza in terms of what we actually think the parking need is, and trying to, you know, meet kind of what I think all across the province we're pushing for, which is to reduce the number of cars and the amount of parking required. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate that point, and hopefully council will consider the standpoint, because that's how we see it. So I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Matthew. You did an excellent job, so I'm not absolutely, so you understand, I'm not criticizing. It's just that I know what the situation is now. And, I just looked at the latest stats, right, on the number of cars being sold right now. It's still slightly exceeding our population growth. So you just can't say it's population growth. So I guess I look at that too, and I go, well, the cars aren't going away. And the very fact that we're suburbia still, we really are. And it's going to take a while before we have enough amenities where we may be sort of self-sufficient. But in the meantime, it's the pain factor right now. And that's all. I came at it from that point of view. And the very fact that we were able to go up to 27 spots from the 17 that you had suggested in the beginning. And I thought, well, I'd be maybe willing to come down a little bit off the 50, but 47% or 49%, whatever that number is, I just went, wow, that's a lot. And I just felt I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say something. And that's why I took it off the consent agenda. That's my point of view. Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And yeah, I'm hoping that the chair of that committee also chimes in and helps me with my recollections. But it was a good discussion. I can tell you straight up that I start from a position for it's a no for a parking variance because of some of the issues that we've run into along the way, and the fact that we did a lot of work developing our parking standard over the last term, and to get to that 0.15, I think 0.015, 0.15.
It's 0.15, now it's 0.08.
Gotcha. So I hear what you're saying. To be fair, I take the traffic report and I bin it as far as the study done by the two firms that seem to forever come before us. Because I've yet to encounter one of those studies that says, no, you shouldn't do that. And I've said that across this table, I struggle with that. So my decision at that meeting was based upon largely the presentation, which I thought was bang on, but also the discussion from two committee members who live within a short distance of this particular location. And I think what we're seeing down at Royal Bay, this is completely anecdotal and unscientific and based on my little walkabouts. There is some shifting going on down there. We are seeing lots of e-bikes and families on the big electric bikes with the carriers, and people walking to and from the daycare or the market. So I think we are seeing some shifting. And I think the discussion also included the fact that more and more people are working from home. The other flip side to that is we're at the edge of the transit universe. I completely agree. And it could be a lengthy period of time before that changes. So having sauced all that into the decision-making matrix and hearing from some of the other council members, I think we came to a number that was somewhere in the middle. And I would be remiss if we didn't take a sober second look, which is why the committee's results come to this table. So I can appreciate your wanting to explore this a little more fulsomely, and I'm open to the dialogue and to hear what my peers have to say. But that was the intention. We felt if this is a site-specific decision for me, this is not across the board. So if the next developer comes from the other side of the community and says we did it over there, well, there's a dozen reasons why we did, because it's a more fulsome community. It's not a standalone apartment on a street somewhere else in the community. So I think the risk perhaps is more manageable in that environment. And also, I mean, Gablecraft has some significant skin in the game at that location. If we get this slightly wrong or there's a miss, it's their development, they're selling those or renting them out, what have you, and certainly they bear the responsibility down there if it ends up being somewhat troublesome. So I'll yield and hear what some of the others have to say. But that was a bit of the background, and I do appreciate it coming back. Thank you.
Yep, thanks very much, Councillor Jensen. It's just that I learned a valuable lesson, I guess, on the last council when we decreased the numbers and then it would automatically went to the other side of the road. It was almost automatic, right? So it's that precedent setting. So if our bylaw is wrong, maybe we should rework the bylaw. That's how I look at it, but I don't think it's wrong. Even though there might be more people using bicycles and things like that, they still are complaining about parking down there with our current standards, our current bylaw standards. So that's the way I looked at it. So, anyone else want to pipe in on this? Councillor Ward.
Certainly, I feel obligated, Mr. Mayor, as you know, a member of that committee or chair of that committee. I would say that the committee members, you know, there was a lot of discussion even post-meeting about, as you mentioned, precedent setting, right? It very much is setting a precedent in terms of granting a variance there. So there was significant discussion, as you heard in the meeting, on what that would look like. And I think the overarching concern from the committee was around the nature of the development itself and the aesthetic, and you know, and the proponents here, you know, Matthew and Sean can speak to that, was that, you know, the design enabled sort of ground level green space, right? You walk right out into it. The aesthetic was considered pretty key to this. And I think the concern amongst the committee members was, how do you maintain that and not turn that into asphalt, right? So, you know, to their credit, the developers, you know, had indicated, okay, there's space in the underground to add 10 more, and that's where that number net out, that percentage, as you heard. So, but you know, I will admit there was some hesitation, and I think the overarching sentiment, if I'm comfortable to say that, was that, well, it's going to go before council, and you know, that's where the final decision will be made. And I think there's unanswered questions there. You know, can something more be done? Obviously, at additional cost, yes, you can dig a hole and $55,000 a spot, you can have more parking. But is there a balance to be found there where, you know, you can maintain more parking and not destroy the aesthetic? And I think that's the unanswered question from the Land Use and Planning Committee, because the design of this development, you know, it's attractive and it's different. You know, I live almost adjacent to a project that is completely the opposite. It's asphalt all around it. It's an eyesore, you know, and the parking standards were maintained there after a significant fight by folks in Royal Bay. Unfortunately, it was uncoupled, so now nobody parks there. They park on the street, and you've got a giant empty asphalt lot. So you have to be careful on both ends of the spectrum. And I think the general sentiment of the Land Use Planning Committee was, well, let's maintain that aesthetic. Let's not kill it here at this committee. But let's elevate it up to council so that there can be a more fulsome discussion around how do we strike a balance. And, you know, and I say in that meeting, you know, both Matthew and Sean were able to move in that direction. Maybe there's more movement required. But, you know, that's to give some insight as well. In addition to Councillor Jansen's, that's kind of the general sentiment of folks even talking afterward.
Thanks very much for putting that on context, Councillor Ward. It's, yeah, no, I'm not even knocking. I think it was so well thought out, and the questions were outstanding at the committee level. They really were. And it was just, like I said, it was just, there's these concerns I had. And I guess to your point, is there a compromise in this? You know, can we look at other options? You know, what are the other options without having to do any further things underground? You know, what is that compromise? You know, I'm always a negotiator. Let's compromise on this. So you know, I think there is, and that's just my opinion. Councillor Day, your turn.
Thanks. I really feel that a lot of times we're trying to do that balancing act of making things more affordable. And sometimes we're giving up some of the most critical parts, because having a place to park and being able to have people over to visit can be a lifesaver. And it can be a game changer in terms of your ability to do life in a way that's profitable for you, that helps you to afford what you're doing. And I know we're talking about visitor spaces, but those are really important too, because if you, if you need a caregiver for your kids or for elderly people, you need that. Your life doesn't happen without it. And sure, you're going to shoehorn it in somewhere, whether it's provided in the development or not. You're going to park on front of somebody else's house or on somebody else's street, or you're going to find a place where nobody notices that you're kind of parked where the sidewalk should be. But that is what we're trying to get right in Colwood. And it's so critically important. And I'm just very concerned that this is not only a precedent, it may or may not be, but it definitely makes it harder to live. And I don't know anybody who could participate in organized sports without a vehicle. I don't know anybody who could, like if you have kids in soccer or baseball, you can't do it on the bus, and you're probably not doing it on your bike because time management just doesn't allow you to. So I think that for my part, we have a parking ratio in our bylaw for a reason, and we need to try to uphold it.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Any other comments, questions? We did. Yep. Councillor Jensen.
Sorry, your worship, the part I wanted to get at is you put it out there. Is there a compromised position here? I don't know if there's any staff member that wants to speak to that at all, or I don't know if the proponent wants to speak to that. Otherwise, we're, I don't know what.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect. Through the
Matthew, do
chair.
you want to speak there? You
Sure.
figured-
Through the chair, yeah, thanks.
Then you, John.
Mayor Kobayashi, yeah, so is there a compromise? I think, we went back after the meeting as well, kind of like Councillor Ward said, same for us. There was more discussion following the meeting, and we struggled to fit 10 more stalls underground, is in keeping with providing all the bike parking as well as storage requirements. So we can do that. I think, for me, a big focus is trying to maintain that green space. We've committed to registering a covenant of, I think it works out to 1.3 acres across the site of green space. I'm just looking at our plan now, the way the ramps come into the site, we've tried to line the visitor parking alongside without having those ramps or visitor parking move too close to the center of the site. I think we could probably accommodate another 10 surface stalls, would be kind of what we'd be willing to do or look at. Beyond that, we'd have to go relook at the design and a potential redesign, which would just include more parking at surface, because I just don't think with the current design, I don't think we could accommodate any more than that.
So just to confirm, Matthew, you're talking 37 total then, right?
Correct.
Thank you very much. I got 10 in this negotiation alone. John, please, if you want to add anything.
I think it sounds like there might be a positive outcome, so I may just get in the way. So unless there's something specific you'd like to hear from staff, I'm happy to leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah. I actually would. So what I guess what I would like to, it's the motion isn't on the floor yet, so I can make a motion. Or would you like to make Councillor Day? Then I can second that. Okay, sure. Councillor Day.
Apologies, everybody. Just trying to decide what's the best way to get forward from where we are now. So I'd like to make a motion that we refer this to staff because of new information from the proponent, and then we can get this right back on the next agenda.
Okay, I'll second that. If that's okay with everybody. Okay, discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous, motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to, I guess Desiree, we're gonna bring that one up again, the rezoning 2346 Sooke Road. Yeah, it's gonna be, no, it's, yeah. That's 8.5 now, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So
You know, Desiree, what I'm gonna do, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna take a recess for 4 minutes here. If everybody can be back at, or 5 minutes, if everybody can be back at 8:44, and then we'll resume. I think everyone needs a health break. Thank you. I like the short one. I like 1 hour meeting better. You guys had 2 minutes. Hey, Desiree, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I believe the applicant was here before you tonight during public participation speaking to this item, and they have a request that they'd like to make. I'll just introduce the applicant. His name is Mark Jordison.
Please.
Yeah, so as I, go ahead.
Oops, no, you just shut yourself off.
As I mentioned in the participation section, we're looking to get the item removed where we have to work with staff to place a rental agreement on the property. Not having a rental agreement in place would just give us some more flexibility in making the development more feasible with interest rates, construction costs. We're working towards making this an apartment building, but we don't want to be handcuffed if it turns out it's not feasible based on estimated rents and construction costs, et cetera. So we'd like the flexibility of there being a potential that it could be a strata condo building if it turned out it wasn't feasible to build a apartment building.
Okay. Have you made this request to staff yet at all? Have they had a chance to review this? And
Well, we emailed the staff about discussing it tonight.
okay. I would prefer this go to staff first and for staff to make the recommendation to council on this. Because you caught us short on this right now a little bit. So I definitely think it should be under consideration by staff first. But that's my opinion on this.
Yeah, if it does go to staff and the staff are in agreement of not having a rental agreement, does that have to go back to council at that point, or?
Yes, because we'll have to pass this, but we do need the staff recommendation. That's how we work here. So yes, I wasn't too clear in the beginning when you had spoken at public participation, but now that I understand your request, I think it has to go for it should go through staff for their consideration, and they will make their recommendation to us.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Jensen? Nope. Councillor? Nope.
Well, you sent them back to staff. So
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're just gonna move on here, and now got myself confused. We're on 8.
Your worship?
Yes.
Your worship?
Yes, Mr. Earl, sorry.
Thank you. It would be helpful for staff, current item 7.3 on the agenda, now item 8.5. Is a recommendation from committee relative to this item. It sounds like council would now like staff to return into a conversation with the developer. If this were to be formally referred, it would make clear how council has dealt with this recommendation.
Okay. So it's a referral back to committee, back to staff. I'll make that motion. Second, Councillor Grove. Discussion, we move on. Oh, sorry, okay, Councillor Day.
Yeah, I'm afraid when we had the consent agenda and then we've changed the agenda to removing the things, I'm completely lost on the numbering of the agenda.
Okay.
So I keep getting confused on where we are.
So we're on 8.5 right now, which was 7.3. Then
Okay.
we're gonna move to 7.4, which is now 8.6,
Okay,
followed by 7.5, which is 8.7.
okay.
Got you? Okay, thank
Think
you very
so.
much.
You may have to remind me at the next item. Trying to think on my feet here. I just think we do have a recommendation that came from the Planning and Land Use Committee here. So we're moving a motion to refer this back to staff.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? It's unanimous, motion carried. We'll move on. Infrastructure Committee, TOR. Councillor Day. Oh, sorry. Whoops, did I miss someone here? Oh no, that's the next one.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
So the Infrastructure Committee terms of reference, the committee made a recommendation. And I would like to move that recommendation. And then I will make a small amendment to that. Just we didn't quite get the wording right. And it is that the Infrastructure Committee terms of reference be amended as follows. This is the recommendation from the committee. That item 3A read as follows. The committee shall be comprised of 5 community members and 2 members of council, one which will serve as chair, as well as the mayor and an alternate council member who, I'm all over the place in terms of the way this was originally written. What I'm hoping to amend is that one council member will be the chair and the other will be the vice chair, as well as the mayor is ex officio, and that we would appoint an alternate council member who would attend in the event that the chair or the vice chair was not able to. And very simple reasoning. I know that a lot of our committees don't have alternates, but I've had a lot of health conditions this year and just was trying to make sure that there would always be 2 members of council able to attend. The committee shall meet 4 times a year at 6:30 p.m. on the second Tuesday of February, April, June, and October. And where the meeting falls on a week of a statutory holiday, the meeting will be moved to the following day to accommodate the regular meeting of council. And that the terms of reference would be reviewed at the end of every term with recommendations for potential improvements.
Thank you very much. Councillor Olson.
Sorry, just to confirm, Councillor Day, so a chair, a vice chair, an alternate, and the mayor? Is that?
Councillor Day, yes.
Yes, the mayor is ex officio on all of the committees, meaning that he can show up or not. He's not required,
Okay.
but if he wants to be there, he can be there. And then the 2 members of council are needed to be at the infrastructure committee meeting. And the alternate would just be somebody who follows along and would come if somebody is unable to attend. So in other words,
Gotcha.
if
Okay.
I'm sick, I would let people know so that someone else could attend.
Thank you.
Could I just, can I get a seconder on the motion and the amendment? Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Olson. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Ward is opposed. I shall move on. Getting confused myself. 8.7 now, which is a proposed subdivision and development servicing bylaw number 2000 to 2024. And Mr. English, you wish to speak at this time?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. And my name is John English. I live at Proctor Place, and I'm actually here this evening on behalf of the Royal Bay Homeowners Association. But one of our members, Roger Conrad, who's not available to be here tonight, asked if we would share our association's views. And I guess there's no way to get into it other than to say that the Royal Bay Homeowners Association would urge our mayor and council to reject any staff proposals that will do anything further to embed the ongoing use of this active transportation plan network that they have. We think it is wrong. We think it is out of touch. And we've been saying that for years. As a matter of fact, For the past 3 years, the Royal Bay Homeowners Association has begged the city to develop an updated, realistic, data-driven transportation master plan that will clearly show how development of the city's transportation systems, as well as its infrastructure systems, will be effectively and efficiently coordinated to support the scale and pace of development that is planned. This is currently needed urgently to protect the city and its citizens from significant problems and extra costs. Some time ago, we were advised that an updated, realistic, data-driven transportation plan was being worked on for consideration by the City Council and by the public. Our question today is, has any progress been made? We haven't seen it. If so, where is the progress? When will it be submitted for the City Council and for the public for our input? All we've seen are apparent attempts from city staff to further embed the active transportation plan network ideas. Most recently by attempting to remove the word draft from that document. We applaud our mayor and council for rejecting that attempt. If city staff are either incapable or unwilling to commit to produce an updated transportation plan that's data-driven within the next few months for our mayor and for the public, it is our opinion that they should be given their walking papers so that the city can engage professionals with the necessary expertise and experience to do so. The need for a realistic, rational, and data-driven transportation master plan and infrastructure plan to support the current scale and pace of development is too important and too urgent to just let this situation continue to drift. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I won't agree with your statement about giving people walking papers though, Mr. English.
I didn't ask for your agreement. I was telling you what we thought. Thank you, Mayor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just wanted to share that a member of the Infrastructure Committee did share with me concerns after the meeting. And I've tried to honor and understand what those concerns are, because I think it's really important that we listen to our residents when they don't have faith in what we're doing as much as when they do. So that it seemed that the biggest concern is, kind of we're stuck between the chicken or the egg coming first. Whether we have a perfectly drawn master transportation plan, or if we accept that we still have some things to work out and go with what we have so far and continue to work on those refinements. So I just wanted to share with council that when the Infrastructure Committee met, staff and myself assured members of the committee that we would be bringing the subdivision and servicing bylaw back to them for updates as they become available to us. And it was Mr. Conrod's position after the meeting that he still felt that he should have stood firm and voted against accepting the subdivision and servicing bylaw that is before us tonight. I wanted to honor that and try to find a way to walk a little bit in each world, I guess. And so I've asked staff if it's possible we could adopt it without the roadway illustrations that lay out the lane widths, sidewalk widths, etc. And the feedback that I received was that that would be very difficult, but staff have confirmed with me their interest in continuing to improve this document. The original, if we don't adopt this bylaw that we have before us here tonight, we're looking at sticking with our 1995 bylaw, which is obviously way out of date. And this one may not be perfect, but it has had a couple of years' work go into it. And so I'm going to suggest that we go with what we have and we bring that back to the committee as soon as we can. The committee has expressed a desire to share in understanding our transportation traffic model when that's ready to be shared with members of the public. And I want to include them in this process and walk side by side with our residents and not and just ask everyone to have a little faith that we're making the commitment to work with people. There wasn't an easy way for me to walk back the decisions that the committee made, because that would also not be fair to the members who are not privy to those discussions. So I'm hoping that we can collaborate and improve.
Thank you very much. Thank you for putting that in context. Can I get a second and then we'll open it up for discussion? Okay, Councillor Olson. I will start with Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's unfortunate we went right to the motion here, but you know, I share Mr. Conrad's concerns. I think one of the greatest challenges I found in this job is that on the one hand, you're trying to affect change. I mean, you run for office because you didn't necessarily agree with some of the things that were happening, so you want to change some things. But by the same token, you recognize that staff need continuity, they need clarity, they need the ability to continue to move forward. And, you know, it's concerning to me, though, that in that effort to move forward, oftentimes comes at the expense of needed change, or at least what I personally feel is needed change. So what I'd like to see is the ability to find that middle ground where we can give staff an updated bylaw, one that they can work with, but that specifically states in it that this is temporary, like the inclusion of the active transportation plan and the master transportation plan is a placeholder for the moment, but is subject to change. And I don't know what that wording looks like, but I bring it back to our discussion around Sooke Road cross sections and the math I did on that. And things get presented as a fait accompli, that this is what we can do, this is what it'll cost because these are the widths we can have. And then you start to look at it and go, well, if you compress the sidewalk from 2.3 to 1.8 and, you know, you narrow your boulevards, or, you know, they're not going to get into, there's a lot of things you can do with lane widths and other things. You realize that, well, maybe that changes the equation, right? I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but there's opportunities to look at things. And my only concern with this is that if we vote for it as it's written now, we entrench it in, and then it circles back around, kind of goes back to that CRD discussion later where someone just goes, well, no, council voted on that, and those bylaws, you know, those plans are entrenched in that bylaw. Clearly they supported those plans, and I don't support those plans. So, you know, I won't support the motion as it is, but I also realize that we need to give staff clarity, and the plans that we have right now are what they're working towards. We shouldn't change that, but I'd be proposing an amendment potentially to indicate that those particular plans are, you know, temporary in nature, just to facilitate ongoing work.
Thank you very much. I'll circle back to you that you have a little time to think about that, Councillor Ward. Staff perspective on this, John, please. If you don't mind, thank you. And then I'll go to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think from a staff perspective, what we're trying to do here, I think Councillor Ward said it rather succinctly, is try to give us some direction, some continuity. The overall attempt here with the bylaw is to provide certainty to pretty well all the players, what the developers expect, what staff expects. It really does outline what we can require, not what we're going to make you do, so to speak. So we can say, for instance, in Sooke, we're going to put in a 2.4 meter sidewalk. But it doesn't mean we have to put in a 2.4 meter sidewalk. It means that we're going to ask for that, because what's going to happen over the next decade or so is we're going to take cash and live. So if we put in there the minimum sidewalk width and say it's 1.8, then we get cash for 1.8 meters of sidewalk instead of 2.4 meters of sidewalk. Now, if 10 years from now we want to go and build the road and put it at 1.8, we can do that. But we'll be cash shy if today we collect 1.8 and we decide to go to 2.4. So from our perspective, what we'd like to do is make sure that we can ask for what we think might be the ultimate, but may not be the ultimate. And it allows us to move within a boundary that's a limit that we set, not a boundary that's been shrunk that we then have to expand at a later date. So when we get through our transportation master plan work, our traffic modeling work, those types will influence those outcomes, and then we can change the bylaw and come back. It's a bylaw. Council ultimately can change it anytime they'd like. So what we'd like to do is get something in place that says, here's today's goalpost, recognizing that. And I think the recommendation where it says continue to work and identify future amendments kind of sets that expectation to staff that we will come back and look at these bylaw requirements within it and then massage them as we go to indicate where we land, not only with just our traffic bylaws, but other bylaws. We're going to have sewer discussion, stormwater discussion. That might change some of our infrastructure requirements with regards to those pieces of infrastructure as well. So it won't just be about roads, but this at least sets some goalposts for us to work within.
So if I understand you properly right now, you're actually happy with this. You can work within.
Correct.
This motion, right?
We had significant conversation at the committee level with Councillor Day and Councillor Jordison about, not accepting the bylaw now. And quite frankly, at that meeting, I recommended to the committee that staff would like to see this passed now and then amended later, as opposed to wait and amend and then come back. Because that process, if we wait for the transportation master plan, could be 18 months or longer.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Mayor. I too echo what Councillor Ward, how Councillor Ward feels and what he said. I also understand John's perspective from staff perspective entirely. It makes sense. But I guess and it is really a chicken and egg thing, but I guess where I'm concerned is that we get to the point where it makes total sense to adopt this tonight, but what happens is then we get told that we've walked too far forward and we've planned out way too much and it's going to cost this much money because we spent this much on plans and we can't walk it back. And to me, that's not acceptable at that point. If we make a change, the change has to be made and it shouldn't be reflective of if the work isn't done already, the planning work. Unfortunately, it just costs money to keep going in a way that we shouldn't be going. So I don't know. And I think out of fairness, some of us on council have been stating this fact since day one, and we're a year and a half in, and I don't feel we have made progress, but I don't feel we've made enough progress. I don't think this is enough of a priority because we just need to have a few more meetings and get this sorted out so that we can get it all on track. And just delaying that is causing this to continue in this way. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I like some of the perspective that Mr. Rosenberg gave us, and I was going to ask the question. I feel like he answered it to some degree, but these things are site specific as well. And, for instance, on Sooke Road, that if we decide to make some adjustments based on the terrain, I don't think we've locked ourselves into this picture right here. Am I right, Mr. Rosenberg?
That's correct. I mean, at the end of the day, we do look at each individual site. This is in some cases, there are cross sections embedded in there that we've already agreed to with developers such as Beachlands, Olympic View, Royal Bay. There's already through that process cross sections that we've agreed to that are in there. And then the other ones are really just at this time an update to what is reflected in where the transportation master plan is likely to head in a direction similar to that. But until we get the transportation master plan and get that full public input, one of the discussion items at the committee meeting was about lane widths. So there was a good discussion about they want to get wider lane widths for various reasons to get garbage trucks passable and so on, so vehicles can pass garbage trucks. And depending on your perspective, wider lane widths leads to higher speeds and different issues that the public may not want on the roads. So those kinds of discussions definitely need to be held through public engagement. But in the meantime, we want to at least, again, back to that piece, set a standard that we think gives us the most flexibility to move and more importantly, to cover off, I think, expenses that in a lot of cases aren't going to occur till late. And I'd rather get more than less in the interim until we figure out that final goalpost. So that's just in an effort to try to, like I say, ensure that we're covering off future costs as best we can with regards to construction.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the explanation. And I do believe, I mean, it's what is it, a 2000 bylaw or 1999? It's time. And if we have to circle back and do a little bit more work in the future when the master transportation plan is upon us, I'm good with that. But we need to update what we're currently using. And if I'm not inclined to wait the potentially 18 months for the master transportation plan. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Councillor Day?
Just a suggestion, because I hear the other voices around the table here who echo concerns of committee members. And it is basically comes down to kind of a trust issue. So I was going to offer that we know when the committee meets. We meet again in April, in June, and then again in October. So if council wanted to specify a date that this bylaw would come back to the infrastructure committee to look at again, that might maybe make people feel better about that we're not forgetting about it or we're not putting it off indefinitely. That we could put a date on when we want to relook at this.
Thanks very much, Councillor Day. Councillor Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, and I appreciate the idea of referring it back to the committee at some point, but, you know, I think the committee's put it forward and then, you know, at least one committee member has kind of had some concerns about the position he had initially staked out. So I really do think the responsibility lies with council at this point to push this through or along or what have you. I do remain concerned that the language, though, entrenches these plans in there and what it would take to review that down the road. It's easy to say, well, we just put it in and we amend it later, but that's a slippery slope. Who knows it'll ever happen again. One of the things I wonder about is I thought, okay, would it be easy just to amend some language in there, a sentence or two? That's something I'm pretty adept at, but I don't see the bylaw here. I imagine it's pretty big, but I've got a report and someone correct me if I'm wrong. There's 3 appendices and then there's presentation, but the actual bylaw is not there. Yeah.
Appendix B.
Okay, there it is. So, I mean, for me, it would be as simple as just going in and adding some language that, you know, a date, as you said, perhaps Councillor Day, that, you know, until anticipated, you know, revision of the master transportation plan and active network plan, that, you know, these will be interim plans for the purposes of this bylaw, something along those lines, because, you know, my concern is once it's hard coded, that's it. You know, we need to give staff this to work with right away, but I don't like the idea of just adopting it and moving forward and then it becomes past history.
Just before I go to you, Councillor Grove, just a quick question, Mr. Earl. How do you do that though with a bylaw? It's just, that's an awkward sort of thing, right? Opinion, please. Advice.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe Councillor Day was probably on to the right tactic. However, we've heard from Councillor Ward that council needs to be the body. So council could ask that the bylaw return automatically into this chambers for review of specific sections like Appendix A, road cross sections, if those are the sections of concern. on a frequency that you can determine within this motion until such time that council determined that that could end. And so it could return every 6 months, for example, until such time that the transportation master plan was updated to the point where council was comfortable that this council had created the clarity that you needed to refine the subdivisions servicing bylaw in a way that it could hold.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's how I understood. Okay, Councillor Grove.
Mr. Mayor, I just think that we need to move forward with this this evening. If we amend and add a date for a return on this issue, I don't quite have my mind around it, but just simply I would be willing to support this as it's written.
Thank you very much. Councillor Day, back to you.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation and add the amendment that it come back in October. And I would assume that it's going to come back by going to the committee first and then coming back to council. That gives us a 1-year time frame that will allow staff the certainty that they need to be sure that they are achieving the maximum retention of investment in infrastructure dollars that they can between now and then. It'll give us time to be working on active transportation and transportation master plan issues so that we can be more certain that what we're putting forward as our subdivision and servicing bylaw is appropriate and as up to date as we can make it. And then determine if that's a better interval or if it I'm proposing October because that's basically a 1-year bring it back.
So did you get that, Marcy?
Yes, we did have a seconder on the original motion. If Councillor Olson wanted to agree to the amendment, we could just put it through like that.
Just friendly amendment then. Okay, thank you very much. So is it a specific area? We just talking about Appendix A, I would assume, or the whole bylaw?
It's only the other plans that are referenced that are of concern.
Okay, gotcha, understand. Councillor Ward?
Sorry, I was kind of answering your question there that was answered by Councillor Day. I was saying section 6 on roads is a pretty key section. It's beyond just cross sections.
That's a big one.
Well, no, the appendix is just a road sections comparison, but if you actually look in it, it's 6.1 right through. There's a few irrelevant ones like driveways and things, but the majority of the start of section 6 is all road related. And I would also include sidewalks and bike structures in there as well.
Yeah, it's about the size of the infrastructure.
Okay, good. Understand. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Ward and Councillor Jordison. Motion passes. And I think we're into bylaws now. Bylaws. Okay, 9.1, Marcy, could I get you just to read the bylaws that we have to get through tonight, please?
Absolutely. So our first bylaw is bylaw number 174203, Development Permit Delegation Bylaw Amendment for Adoption.
Okay. Mover and seconder. Okay, Councillor Olson, Councillor Jensen. Discussion? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimous.
Bylaw, bylaw number 2019, Colwood Main Sewer LAS enlargement for 525 Mount View Avenue for adoption.
Motion, please. Mover, Councillor Grove, Councillor Jordison. Discussion? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
Bylaw number 2000, subdivision and development servicing bylaw for first and second reading.
As
Amended.
amended.
Oh, no, not
Or that's
amended.
not amended, is it?
No.
The changed one. Motion, please. Councillor Olson and Councillor Grove. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Ward, Councillor Jordison. Okay, 9.4, go ahead, please.
Bylaw number 2021, the 5-year financial plan for 2024 to 2028 for adoption.
Councillor Grove and Councillor Olson. Discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimous.
Sorry. Last one is bylaw number 2007, the land use omnibus amendments, 2023 omnibus amendments adoption.
Okay, mover please. Councillor Olson, Councillor Ward. Discussion. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimous. Now we shall go into in camera. I can ask everyone to leave. It doesn't have to be there. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.